Okay, so first of all, I popped an intersessional task on Moodle for you to work on last week, which was to read the module handbook, the assignment briefs, the weekly schedule and the reading list. A lot of the books that we have got are physical books, so we do have some ebooks that are on the reading list, but I'm just working with Gail to add some more ebooks, because you will need to do some reading around the topics that you're interested in. Also ask you to look at some examples from previous years and start thinking about the global topic that you might be interested in. I wouldn't worry too much about it at this stage, because some students don't decide on their topic until a lot nearer the time, sort of Easter time. So I wouldn't worry about that. But when you did look at some examples, that there was an important thing to be aware of, is that we changed the assignment slightly this year. So the assignment one is really about writing a report about the global topic and the sorts of decisions businesses and other organisations need to make and how they might do that. Whereas the presentation is really an extension of your paper, but focusing on what global organisations are doing within that subject that you're researching. And I also have a look at the weekly schedule to see if you've looked if there's anything else that you want me to add, because I could add an additional topic in there if you wanted me to, and start engaging with the news and bring along a topic that you might be interested in. So how did you get on with the intersessional task?
I mean, obviously, I didn't know about it, but the kind of global issue that kind of is interesting at the moment, I did a lot of like traveling before lockdown and just going to different places and seeing their kind of like ethical stance on like beauty products.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've seen a bigger push going to smaller places in the UK where it's like more of an issue and people are caring about it more. So maybe like their beauty products and what's going into it that's, you know, harming elsewhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it hadn't been for Dame Anita Roddick forming the Body Shop and lobbying against animal testing, the UK and Europe would still be testing beauty products on animals. So without a pioneer like Dame Anita Roddick, we wouldn't have the change in legislation now. It's quite interesting as well that globally, it's not such an issue for some countries as it is for us. Now that's something we can explore a little bit more if you want to. Ethics. I don't want to go down that line too much because I don't want to overlap too much with Rob's module. Is anyone doing Rod's module, the ethics one?
Yep.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I am.
Okay, so there's a few. So if you wanted to, I could have a look at bringing in a bit of ethics, but not doing too much that I'm sort of repeating what Rob's saying. But yeah, definitely an interesting topic. And provenance, where are the ingredients being sourced? In one of our lessons on sustainability, we look at cotton trade and we look at palm oil in terms of where it's sourced and ethical supply chains. And that's usually quite a popular topic with students. They tend to get quite passionate about it, and quite rightly so, you know. So what I'll do is I might bring in a bit more about the supply chain in that lesson.
Will we be covering anything like cultural differences across?
Yeah, we've got a session on national culture, and again that's another popular topic. So we look at the differences between culture, and we look at models like Hofstede, which I know you look at in your first year with David. So we look at applying Hofstede, and we look at some other cultural models as well. So yeah, and we have a look at some funnies in terms of the differences between East and West. So yeah, we do that.
Do we look at like global supply chain issues? Like I suspect there'll be one in like a few decades down the line. There's a lot of major shipping companies that like scrapped a lot of their fleets as a result of COVID, where they haven't been getting as much traffic. Obviously, that's going to be a bigger impact in the future once shipping returns to more regular levels of demand, but the supply can't be built up quite so rapidly.
That's a really good point. In our international trade session, we do look at global trade. I can add a little bit more about specific supply chain challenges that organisations are faced with now and link it to COVID and Brexit. Okay, that's good. So any other things that people are particularly interested in?
Is stuff like poverty going to be covered as well?
So, stuff like what?
Like poverty, like homelessness and stuff across the world. Or is that not really like a global kind of thing?
Well, homelessness and poverty and obesity are all global issues. So I could, if you wanted to, bring in a bit more of a society focus on homelessness and poverty.
I mean, if there's enough information for it, I mean, I personally think that's interesting anyway. Yeah. But for a whole class, I'm not sure I'd have to go in a poll.
Yeah, would the wealth gap be more relevant in like particular? It's kind of the two. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they say that the wealth gaps are widening, but also even the people who in the least advantaged places in the world their lives are improving as a result. So there's a whole moral debate about whether it's okay for the rich to get even richer if people are still globally getting a little bit better off.
Yeah, I mean, we do touch on that, and I've got some good statistics to show you just how bad that is and how bad it's been for some time. But we could go into a bit more depth in terms of homelessness, poverty, mental health, the wealth gap.
Are we at all going to look into like how the rise of mega corporations has led to a ability for some companies to have unequal balance of power against actual world governments? Like I know there's like Nestle, for example, is I think personally the most unethical company in the world. If you look at their past business practices, and they've gotten away with an awful lot because of their size. Like, and also you can see like where, what is it? I think smoking companies legally challenged a national government which wanted to put bans or restrictions on smoking, like the health things that we have here in the UK, because said government couldn't afford to fight a legal battle at the World Trade Organization against it.
Yeah, I mean, we do touch on that. I think you've raised a good point that some multinational corporations have a higher GDP than some countries. And I think that's a particular issue at the moment with organisations like Tesla and the issues they've had with mining cobalt for car batteries in an ethical way. Okay. So I've added that to the list.
Sorry, do we have to talk about global businesses that are happening right now, or can we discuss things that might happen in the future, or is that a bit too, there's not enough information to feed on, like for the future, I guess, or is that like a possibility we could cover as a small topic?
Well, what you can do in the assignment is you focus on the global topic. So the global topic might be it might be international trade, for example. And you might, in your presentation, focus on specific organisations now, if you've got the information, what they're doing, and what the challenges are that they're faced with and how they've overcome them. Or if you're thinking about a brand, a really new technology, a disruptive technology that is just coming out now, you're not going to have too much information, and you can certainly hypothesize about the future challenges and responsibilities that they're going to have in the future.
Do you think we should really focus on like what's happening today and rather less than the future? I feel like that's a bit too vague. The future is there's not enough evidence yet. So.
Yeah, I would, but don't discount it. Put your ideas forwards. I I mean, the assignments are really about, so the conference paper is like a hybrid literature review, but your own thoughts. So it's a paper that you would go and research a global topic and actually put your views in as well as what you're finding.
Okay.
So that's what makes it quite nice, is it's not as heavy as a literature review, but you'll find to get that global focus, you'll need to add in quite a bit of statistics and quantitative data to just show to what extent the global topic is an issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Pardon?
So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So certainly add a bit of future in, because it's like your platform to say what you think. Okay, anything else? Okay, so that's a really good point. So I've made some notes there. What you might find is I've opened up on Moodle a lot of let me just flip into Moodle. I've opened up quite a lot of my former lessons. Now, the reason for that is that you might want to get some resources to start reading around the global topic before I actually teach it. So I'll just go in. I haven't shown you the slides. I certainly could, but what you'll find is some of the topics that we've talked about today will be weaved into other sessions. Okay. Okay. Right, so.
Can I just say I appreciate the slides being up already, because then it gives. Oh, I like it because it's, we can get to see what's next for next week, so we're not like just sprung on it kind of thing. We kind of get like you said, get to do a bit of research before we jump into next lesson.
Yeah, definitely. That's okay. I'll always, because this is on a Monday, I'll always aim to load them up Friday. Okay. If not before. Okay, so today I'm just going to go through the assessment criteria. We'll start to look at some of the world's biggest global challenges today. You've also identified quite a few good ones as well. We're going to look at some key demographics. Now, this is what you'll find is the first few weeks of this module is a bit economics based. So did anybody go on the economics module last year?
Yes.
Okay. So,
no,
Omar?
but is there any way that we could get access to some of the documents from that?
Oh, hang on a minute. What, from the economics module?
Yeah, because I didn't do it, but I would have liked to. But I chose something else because it was better for my accounting degree.
I don't know. You could always ask Simon. Simon, his surname is Simon Mouatt, Mouatt, I think.
Okay, I'll do
Could always
that.
ask him. But in the absence, we've got lots of books on economics online and business environment. So if you type.
Yeah, it's just to do it in a kind of more structured, like entry level module format's better than just put economics into the library because it's a big subject, isn't it?
If you start with business environment books, they're a little bit softer.
Richard, if you want, after this lecture I did it, I can go along and refer you to like the main textbook I used throughout the economics thing if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, cheers.
So Sloman's a popular one. But thank you, Omar, for helping. Richard, if you get stuck on that anymore, then if you could email me, then I'll come up with some books for you to have a look at, because I've taught economics at a basic level. So if you do need further guidance after you've had a chat with Omar, then let me know.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so how did you get on with the handbook, the assessment and looking at the assignment briefs.
Yeah, all right. Is there any change in format for this year with the presentation still? You just go ahead.
I mean, that's a really good question. At the moment, it's a bit early to say. So if, for example, we're still in lockdown, come the presentation, then we can switch that to you basically record your own presentation and submit it on Panopto, on ChiPlayer.
Okay, thanks.
That's what happened last year as well. We were in lockdown then. And I'll put plenty of guidance on Moodle for you if you're unfamiliar with recording your presentations and loading them up. I'm sure you're all probably experts by now.
Myth, I had some trouble finding exactly where the module handbook was in regards to.
Okay, let me show you. So under module information, this is your handbook.
Oh.
Okay, so it's no longer a Word document. It's just a short handbook for each module now. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to run through the assignment requirements just briefly. Now, it is an individual, both of them are individual assignments, or you can pair up with somebody else. Some people do like to pair up, especially if when looking at your other priorities being the dissertation. So some people do like to pair up. If you're pairing up, the word count for the report will be the same. However, you will get extra time with the presentation, to be fair. So assignment 1 is a conference paper about a specific global topic, and you're going to explore how organisations make decisions. So some of the early business decision-making models that you've looked at in previous years, you're going to apply them to the global situation. Now, having that global focus is really important. So, for example, if you're interested in homelessness, you need to think about it from a global perspective, not just a UK one. Your presentation will take key points from your paper, but you're going to have a much more focus on what organisations and governments are, what they're actually doing to address the situation. And what challenges they might have overcome. So when it says country, always think what's the government doing and what specific organisations are doing.
Sorry, Tara, did you say that the report could be done by you and another person?
And the presentation.
And the presentation.
Yeah.
So if we're focusing on one point, is it still 10 minutes per person, or
for the
would it be 5 minutes?
For the presentation, you'll get that time each. So you'll get 10 minutes each.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but for the paper, I like to keep it quite short and concise. So I would say stick to the word count for assignment 1. You won't be penalised if you go over if you're working in a pair. But I would encourage you to stick to the word count as much as possible. Okay, so assignment 1, the key thing, looking at a global focus, but also looking at it from different perspectives. So you're thinking about stakeholders. So I would say look at it from 2 or 3 different perspectives, because that will give your paper a dimension, and you're really thinking a lot more critically at this level. So it might be that the government's doing something in, let's say, Brexit and the supply chain. You're looking at that. So you might have a perspective, what is the government doing? Why is this an important issue for the government to address? But then also look at it from a business and a consumer perspective. So you're not having a flat document just on one perspective. Now, the reason for that is if you go to a conference and you write a paper and you're invited to talk about that paper, you're going to want to connect to that audience quite well. And in order for you to have a balanced piece of paper, you need to think about different perspectives, not just one. It might be that you feel really, really passionate about deforestation caused by palm oil production, but actually you need to think about what the good things are for the community for that as well. Consider how global issue impacts these. So this is where you bring in some statistics. So using Statista, ONS, and there's quite a few other websites that I'll introduce you to throughout the module. And then think about what demands and needs for change there are. And then we're going to look at decision making. So you can use your PESTLE, your STEEPLE, your Porter's 5 forces, your Porter's value chain. Think about the strategy module that you did with Rob last semester, and think about the models that you could actually apply there as well. It might be that you use root cause analysis. You might quality management, thinking about your operations management module. And then we've got 4 learning outcomes. So you'll see learning outcome 4 is about reasoned argument and really clear and concise writing. Now, the reason for that is, you know, this is your last module. Next year, you're going to be out either working in a management role or applying for further study. I know the situation at the moment is quite challenging, so the more critical, the more higher thinker you are, the more opinionated, backed up with a reasoned approach, is going to improve your chances of getting a job, amongst others. So you've got 3 learning outcomes for that. Assignment 1, and then assignment 2. You basically draw on that paper, but you're focusing specifically on what opportunities and challenges government and organisations are dealing with. So it doesn't have to be a private sector, it can be a private sector, or it can be a voluntary sector. Okay, any questions about the assignments? Anything unclear?
No, I've got an idea for a topic. Do we run that by you, or do we just go through it?
I would say if you run it by me, I can point you in the right direction. And if I've got some additional resources that I can make available to you, then I will.
Okay. Shall I email you something later?
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Okay. Cheers.
So we do lose one lesson on this module because of the bank holiday, which is unfortunate, but I can I'll probably squeeze in a bit more of a society focus lesson somewhere, but I'll have to think about that outside. Is there anything on this list that people aren't particularly interested in? Because not every topic's gonna interest you.
Personally, I don't like politics as much. Personally, I don't mind covering it because I know it's important. But yeah, personally for me, I know there's a lot of people here, but personally for me, I don't like politics.
Yeah, I mean, we don't cover politics as such. What we do cover is the economic side of it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just as long as it's like not full politics at all. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I absolutely love politics, so crack on if you've got any politics, guys.
Well, you can keep to your politics. I'm fine with that.
Well, there's no reason why, if you love politics, that your assignment can't be about that.
Good, because it kind of is.
Did you have the opportunity to have a look at some of the previous year's assignments?
No, not yet.
Okay, do have a look because there's a real wide range of different topics. Okay, have we got any marketing students today?
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Okay, now global e-commerce is a really interesting one for marketing students, and I'm going to bring in a bit of digitalisation this year.
Okay, cool.
Okay, national culture is also another interesting, another useful one for marketing. Okay. Right, okay, so let's have a think. What are the current global challenges that all organisations need to consider? Okay, what do you think? Let's have a little list. What are the current global issues that all organisations need to consider?
Corporate social responsibility.
CSR. Okay. Yep. What else?
Coronavirus.
Yeah, lovely.
Brexit, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Tax rates.
Now, is that tax rates for personal or business?
Business and both. They both impact businesses entirely.
Okay.
Well, I suppose like corporation tax affects all of them, but personal tax does affect most anyway.
Okay. Yeah,
Freedom
I mean,
of movement.
Pardon? Freedom of movement. Yeah.
China.
What specifically?
I mean, it's just we're developing incredibly fast and quite aggressive at times.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's to be aware of. Certainly, governments have to approach China with trepidation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Data protection laws as well.
Yeah. Data protection.
Is sustainability one?
Yeah, definitely.
I've heard that there's a mild increase in authoritarianism worldwide. Democracy is actually on the decline a little bit. I wonder if that is relevant. Probably is.
Yeah, so right wing. Yeah,
That's
I think
more reactionary.
Although I guess you could be right wing and not authoritarian. Like the US is free market libertarianism, isn't it?
Yeah, I think people like Trump have affected. Well, have they affected it, or is it cause and effect? Has Trump caused it, or is he an effect? Is he a result of it?
I'd say both. Honestly, he got into power as a cause of that was already there. Then he stirred it up and made it larger. It was a reactionary movement against all the sustainability and all of those movements that had pretty much annoyed a certain demographics like coal miners and all that who do lose their jobs as a result of it, which gave him big enough support base to win the first year, which he then used to increase support for reactionary politics himself.
Yeah, I think you've got other areas of corruption as well in particularly with countries like Africa, where you see presidents who have been in power for years. I think that seems to be another reoccurringly issue in today's society.
What about education?
Yeah, what about education?
Like some countries get it and some don't, and it's affecting how people learn.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that gap between developed and developing economies, definitely. And education, you're right, is at the heart of that.
On the back of education, and I guess bringing social media into it, is this whole like zeitgeist for fake news. People, for some reason, don't care about facts that much at the moment. At least in the Western world, that seems to be a phenomenon.
Yeah, some of my students did a video on another module about fake news, and putting the I don't know what it's called because I'm not a marketing guru, but putting people's faces over someone else's face, and you couldn't really tell.
Deep fake, right?
That's it, deep fake.
Would another issue be in regards to certain nations favouring their own companies? Like I know China does that quite a lot. Like it makes it very hard for foreign entities to compete within it, and will be pretty lax in regards to its IP laws.
Yeah, so protectionism. I think America have started, well, with Trump, they had a little bit of that as well. And I don't know if you ever remember the issue with China dumping cheap steel on the European market, which meant that some of our steel mining businesses went out of business. So whole communities were you know, the whole.
Yeah, the Welsh mines.
That's it, and up in Yorkshire as well. It happened more recently. So yeah,
I think China on some of its own companies as well. I think it can be quite aggressive. So if its own countries use the US stock market and things like that, or US regulation laws, China are really hostile and then kind of refuse services to it.
Mm.
Oh, even worse than that, like one of like the leader of their equivalent to Amazon and like Google combined went along and made a statement. He thought there's a little bit too much regulation going in, and he disappeared for like 3 months.
He's not back yet, is he?
No, he isn't.
No, he is back. He is back now.
Oh, is he? Like, I thought he just had like one meeting, which was pretty much framed.
Is he unscathed?
That I don't know. It was, yeah, it did
Not
seem
aware
like
yet.
a staged video conference meeting where he was seen.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Anything else? We've got a long list here. I've got a list of at least 11.
I think stuff like wildlife being affected globally as well. So some animals becoming extinct in some certain countries and stuff.
Yeah.
And well, I guess it ties into climate change and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So
Access to services like internet, like I know that's a pretty big one, but like the link likes of Starlink being offered as an alternative for like pinning in Africa rapidly.
yeah, I mean, there's a huge number. I haven't got the statistics with me today, but there's a huge number of people that don't even have electricity. You know, so
Also, gender parity.
yeah.
In one of those documents that were on Moodle, I was surprised that apparently the rate, even though the wage parity is improving between genders, apparently it's not improving enough, because if we continue at this pace, it will take 118 years before it's equal.
Yeah.
Pretty shocking.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we even in education, there's a big divide. So you wouldn't expect to see that, but yeah, absolutely. I don't know why it's still carrying on in today's society. Yeah. But you've also got wider issues about gender as well. You know, that are considered in terms of being much more understanding and being more sensitive to the differences in gender.
Could healthcare be a reason? Could healthcare be a global issue or not?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're really lucky with the NHS, even though it's been significantly underfunded for years. We're so lucky to have a free health service, where some countries, you know, a lot of countries don't have free healthcare, including America.
Well, they're actually in a very small minority, but it's mainly like in terms of advanced countries, they're the only one. But in terms of like less developed, that's where you'll start to see them not including it.
Mm.
Also,
Yeah.
I heard a stat the other day, because I guess the assumption public versus private is that public sector is inefficient in comparison. But I heard a statistic that apparently the US, just the expenditure on medicine and healthcare is 19% of GDP, forgetting public or private for a minute, whereas in the UK it's about 8% and most of Europe is about 9%. So even though it's private, it doesn't make it any more efficient necessarily.
Oh yeah, they have the most expensive healthcare of any developed nation in the world, like with relatively mediocre results to show for it.
Okay, anything else? I've got 16 on my list so far. Okay.
I think we mentioned earlier. Sorry, just one more. I think we mentioned earlier about the cultural differences. Of course, that's it. I think we've got more than enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of really good points. So let's have a look at some of what other people think. So first of all, I've just made a little list. Let's see how many of these you got. I'm sure you've got these plus more. Brexit. At the moment, the government is focusing on COVID-19, dealing with that situation, and Brexit, making sure that we can get trade deals and our supply chain is reinforced. Another thing in terms of the economy is the number of redundancies. We're having mass redundancies as a result of COVID-19, and there is the concern that we're going into yet another recession, which is likely to be a global recession rather than just a UK one. So why does it matter if there's lots of people redundant? So why does it matter to the government?
Well, if redundant
Because
aren't doing as much production, it's a lesser value to the national economy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else? Okay, but the government's
if they're unemployed, the government then support them.
Yeah, so yeah,
not
they're going to have
taxation from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're not getting the tax from, they're not getting the income tax. They're having to borrow more. And if you're highly leveraged in terms of borrowing, we borrow from other countries. So if we borrow too much and we borrow a lot more than our GDP, then we're going to end up having to pay higher interest rates for the money that we do borrow from other countries. Also, loss of skills. So if people are not working and they're out of work for a long period of time, they're going to lose skill sets, they're going to lose motivation, confidence, but also they're not going to have enough money to spend. If you don't spend money in the shops, the businesses aren't going to continue being there. They're going to go bust, and therefore the government isn't getting that tax income and is having to pay out. So it's a bit like a vicious circle. So the government always wants to focus on keeping that money moving, so people are spending and people are in work. So keeping unemployment low and increasing the numbers of economically active, so people who can work being in work. So recently, over the last couple of years, we've seen quite a drive to get more people who are disabled or on benefits back into the workplace, rather than losing those skills gaps. Climate change, that's fast becoming a high priority for all governments. Looking at maintaining the country's financial position through fiscal and monetary policy, we touched on that just now. Reducing net migration, so that's the difference between people coming into the country and people leaving the country. So with Brexit, one of the things behind that was a lack of tolerance for migrant workers. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but that was one of the issues. However, skilled migrant workers are needed by the UK economy because we don't have a skilled labour force in certain sectors. So NHS, for example, we don't have enough skilled doctors or nurses, before the COVID-19 pandemic. So another area is agriculture. Domestic workers don't want to do agricultural jobs, but a lot of Eastern European migrant workers would want to do that, and they are particularly skilled in that area. So the government wants to reduce the number of migrant workers, but still bring in skilled migrant workers where needed. With Brexit, this opens up opportunities for us to source skilled migrant workers, not just from Europe, but from other countries. Increasing productivity, so making sure we're producing goods and services, and increasing the amount of foreign investment. So if we think about, we've heard a lot about Pfizer. Pfizer is an American business who actually set up a couple of plants in the UK. So encouraging foreign-owned businesses into our country will mean that they're providing jobs for our local communities, but they're also paying taxes when they're not avoiding it or evading it. And also they're training up the labour force that we have here. So security, cyber terrorism and political unrest are big issues. I think at the moment that can probably be moved up higher than 10, particularly with some of the activity we're seeing in terms of politics and possibly civil unrest. Okay, so there's some of the issues, but you've also highlighted a lot of other issues that are considered much more globally focused, but the UK is primarily focusing on these at the moment. So I'm going to talk about COVID a little bit, okay, just so that we can start to put it into perspective and then look at how it connects with other issues. Okay, as of the 29th of January, unfortunately, there's been over almost 101 million cases of COVID-19, and that includes over 2 million deaths. So the UK, 3.74 million cases with 103,000 deaths. Now, to put it into perspective in terms of the enormity of that, in World War II, we had 450,000 deaths. So it's already 25% of all of the deaths in World War II. The biggest killer in the UK every year is heart disease. So on average, 40,000 people die of heart disease in the UK. There's also quite a high proportion of people who die from car accidents, are murdered, that sort of thing. And some people think that by us staying in the house, that has reduced deaths in those areas. But I'm not going to go into that any further than that. So let's have a look at globally in terms of global comparisons. So we can see here that the Americas have a lot of deaths. However, America is absolutely huge. So if we compare it with Europe, Europe is tiny compared to America in terms of population. So actually, this highlights that Europe hasn't been doing very well at all. And interestingly, Southeast Asia is quite low, Eastern Mediterranean, Africa and Western Pacific, which includes China, is tiny. So why did these countries or these regions manage COVID-19 and have fewer deaths than us?
Well, a couple of factors that supposedly come into play. There's one that Europe's incredibly dense, particularly the UK.
Yeah.
And the other is just part of the nature of living in a liberal democracy means that the state can't necessarily put a gun in somebody's face and say, stay inside for the month while we get a hold of this. Because that goes against everything that we're ingrained in. I'm not saying that authoritarianism is great, but that is a benefit in the face of a pandemic, which requires people to behave themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is probably one of the major differences in terms of dealing with it.
Isn't it also necessary that we record cases differently?
Yes, yeah, there are differences in statistical reporting,
kind of skews the results, whereas China aren't measuring necessarily the death from COVID, even if they've had COVID, whereas Sweden and other places are.
Yes,
also, some nations don't have the infrastructure to check. Like, think of Africa, where it's got a relatively low amount of people. That would be influenced by that, and also they're a less globalized area, so you're not going to have as many people going from one area to another, which means there's less opportunity for it to spread.
Yeah, I think travel's got something to do with it. Yeah. And globalization in terms of people travel more nowadays than they did 100 years ago.
Also, I think our government did take a gamble that probably killed 10,000 people. I'm not necessarily saying that it was the wrong choice to make, but it was a gamble, and that was the result.
Yeah. It's been a difficult time. I think the government thought it was doing the right thing, but I think we can all learn a lot of lessons from the government and business and consumers' behaviour during that time. You know, it's a big cultural shock for us, you know, being you know, a very democratic country. Okay, so let's have a little look at this. This is a map showing the global number of cases. So the dark purple are the real hot spots. So you can see the UK, Spain, Portugal, Sweden, a few pockets in like Switzerland just above Italy there, Germany, some real hotspots, and the US. So it's interesting how the developed countries seem to have got more impact than others. I mean, South Africa is quite high as well.
Reported might be an important word in this. For instance, Mexico were renowned as not reporting cases, and I think it was really, really bad there. And I see they've got a nice middle of the rung rating.
Yeah, I think if you look at China, mainland China, it's tiny in comparison with other countries, considering that's where it originated from. Okay, so at the moment we've got a bit of an issue in terms of global trade. So we've got the issue with vaccine supply and demand. So at the moment we've got more demand than we can supply. And that's not just in terms of the AstraZeneca, but it's also the Pfizer one as well. And at the moment over the last couple of weeks, we've had fears of a return to sort of a vaccine nationalism, meaning that you know, people are becoming a lot more protective about supplies. And last week we had the issue with the EU threatening to stop the manufacturing plant in Belgium exporting to the UK. Okay, so thankfully, when I was preparing these slides, we wasn't quite sure what was going to happen, and there was the threat of blocking 40 million doses. Thankfully, it seems they seem to have backed down a little bit, but there are still political sensitivities over supply and demand, and there probably will be over the next year. So we need to make sure that health systems are robust enough to manage the vaccination of millions of people, get enough supplies in, and target frontline health workers to ensure they're fully vaccinated, but also that they understand who in the community needs to have those vaccinations, so some people don't get left behind. So in order to do that, the government's got to provide adequate financing, and the NHS has got to make sure that it manages its costs effectively. So that is a challenge, particularly when they're really stretched on the front line. Okay, so another thing that the government's been talking about quite a lot is education. So why do you think education is so important, and why are schools and colleges and universities encouraged or required to stay open? Giving you a bit of
I guess it's because obviously keeping the skills up in each country is important, because it helps the economy and like the future.
Absolutely.
I guess because everything, even like right now, we're online. It's a different way of teaching, and it's for a lot of people. It's, you know, kind of ties in with mental health and how students learn. It's very different, and it's not going to be exactly the same. So to try and replicate, you know, we can call it like normal education, I guess, like face to face. It's really important to try and match, to get the same skills like Joe said, and try and get the same kind of level of education as you would, face to face.
Absolutely, because you know you are the future. You are going to be working in the economy for several years after you graduate, so you need to be as fully prepared as you possibly can be.
Also, this disruption to education because of coronavirus is just going to further widen the disadvantages that we already have in society.
And there's also differences. People who need a little bit more support with their studies. The gap between them and the more agile learner is going to be bigger.
I'd heard it said that before the coronavirus pandemic, approximately a least disadvantaged child when they graduate from their GCSEs are about 18 months behind than somebody who's more well off, and this is only going to exacerbate that. Absolutely,
yeah. So that's the importance, because an issue we had 20 years ago was NEETs, young people, the lost generation we called them, who were out of work, not in employment, not in education or training, and that was a whole generation where we lost a lot of skills, and there was a lot of unemployment at that time. So yeah, it costs time and money to retrain those individuals to get them back into society, and it can lead to all sorts of issues around mental health, in particular, which is a concern at the moment. But also the UK's education is one of our biggest exports. So education is a really exportable product, and it brings in quite a lot of money to the industry. So we've got reduced international students in the UK higher education system. However, interestingly, us at Chichester, and the business school, we've had actually a huge increase in the numbers of international students. I don't know if that's because of the smallness of the university and the support that they get, but we've seen an upsurge in international students.
Would another feature be, like, on a political aspect, if you was to go along and close universities for a year, you can have like a bunch of people, like particularly imagine us lot, like who are studying, be particularly annoyed at the political party who suggests it, and as such you're likely to see any political party unlikely to back it themselves, even if they did potentially want it due to the potential ramifications of you're talking, as you said, the future. There'll be a ripple that will last for quite a long time in terms of resentment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's a really good point. There's also another perspective to think about is our supply chain. Universities actually provide a lot of employment to people and a lot of business to the supply chain. So that's another reason to keep education open. Okay, so there's been a huge impact on business training with the shift to online, and there's been a big acceleration of digitalisation. So we've got any IT students here this morning?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so what do you think about the challenges that some businesses have had to deal with?
I mean, it depends on the angle that you're looking at, like you said earlier. It's the toss-up between the business's financial objectives and the environment or the employee impact that they're having. I know a lot of businesses are trying to reduce their footprint, but then at the detriment of their employees. So it's just them weighing up the cost of either doing so or not doing so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the size of the business has an impact on how they've coped with the sort of transition to online as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the smaller companies might not have the funding to like provide laptops necessarily, and they might have used a bring your own device thing before, which they can't necessarily use now and don't have the architecture set up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? How I mean, it's sort of raised awareness in terms of how we can actually use the digital economy to benefit business. And do you think things will go back to how they were before? Or do you think actually this is something set now? People are going to use online a lot more than they did before.
Not completely, no. I think they'll use it a lot more because they've invested in the technology and they see some benefits, but I don't think it'll be completely this from now on either.
Okay. Okay, so that's good stuff. So what we've had is a lot of impact on business survival rates. So a lot of businesses will go out of business and have gone out of business as a result of reduced income. We have seen some mass redundancies with businesses closing, particularly in the airline sector. And I don't know about you, but if you go to the supermarket, you'll see that does anyone go shop in Sainsbury's? I do. So their personnel have shifted from checkouts to stocking shelves, but also encouraging the promotion of the scan as you go. So encouraging consumers to switch towards self-scanning rather than checkout queuing. So they've done that to try and avoid redundancies. Reduce tax payments to government, reduce consumer spending. Has anyone found that they've actually spent more since lockdown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using the sort of delivery system, I think the prices aren't like they're slightly more expensive, and plus delivery charges as well. I know on Deliveroo and stuff you can buy now, and that's a lot more expensive than if you go and shop and look at the deals. So.
Yeah, I think there was also in terms of the pricing of products nowadays, there has been an increase in products in general. So is that you actually can't get so much in your shopping basket now than you could pre-COVID. Obviously, we've had global supply chain impacts where we've had shortages of supply, panic buying, and possibly sourcing products from other countries, and supermarkets in particular have had to source new supply chain customers to deal with stock shortages from other suppliers. The threat of global recession, but according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are one of the big four consultancy organisations, there's a lot more focus on crisis and risk management. I think this whole pandemic has highlighted the lack of risk management governments focus on in general, and businesses. So that's something that I think will stay with us. A lot more focus on managing risk. Okay, so here's some of the world's biggest challenges according to the World Economic Forum. Now, that's a really good website to check out. And these are the top biggest challenges. So looking at this, I think you've already talked about quite a lot of them, but food security and is one we've not discussed. Health care we've sort of discussed. Long-term investment, infrastructure and development, that's things like making sure that there's enough transport routes, ports, high-speed trains, roads, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I did have a task for you to do in a minute, but because we've had such a good chat, I'm going to miss that task out. Okay. Now the reason we've got this polar bear on an iceberg is what? Basically, millennials, even out of all of these issues here, one of the top focus for millennials like yourselves is climate change. Now, this was pre-COVID, but climate change has started to become more of a priority for governments, and it really is the second on the agenda at the moment globally. So it's moved from something like 10 over the last few years to number 2 in terms of priority. So also younger people are more concerned about conflict, inequality and poverty, which you've highlighted to me today, and the lack of education. So it's quite interesting to see the different perspectives. And if you are interested in a more ethical, socially focused topic, then you might want to have a look at the United Nations global goals for sustainability. So globally, they want to reduce poverty, hunger, etc. So these are the 17 sustainable development goals that all ethical businesses and governments are working towards. And some of them we're going to be focusing on in this module. So I would say, if you're interested in this topic, I'm not going to ask you to do this today because we won't have time, explore on Moodle the hyperlinks under here. So I've put some news articles for you. If you're interested in it, have a little look through there and start thinking critically about what the issue is, what the significance is, and start thinking about some solutions that you have in your mind. Now, this is an optional, so it's not a mandatory, but if you're interested in the topic, have a little look online and start reading around the topic. Okay, so any questions or comments? Okay, I'm just going to provide you with a very brief overview in terms of global demographics, because it is a very important economic and societal issue that we need to think about. All organisations are mindful of global demographics, and we're going to go through some of them in a minute. So the first thing to think about is the world population. So how many people live in the world that we live in today? Anyone like to have a guess?
7.3 billion.
Okay.
Doesn't go from original 7.5.
Okay, so as you can see here, since 1801, the introduction of industrialisation, we've had a huge population increase. So this is globally. So we're now globally at around 78 billion people. And in the UK, 7.8 billion people, sorry. And in the UK, we have a population of 66.5 million. Now that is only 0.8% of the global population. So in the scheme of things, the UK is tiny. When you think about the European Union, the countries that have the most importance in terms of their viewpoints are the countries with the highest populations, because they represent the highest number of citizens. So with us no longer in the European economy, Germany and France are now the two largest populations. So it took from 0-100 to 1801 to reach the first billion, but with industrialisation it's significantly escalated. However, there has been a reduction in population, and that reduction is likely to change, and that has nothing to do with COVID. There are a number of reasons why we are having a slower growth rate than we have been.
Can I just ask quickly, was this study done before or after COVID started?
So these numbers are from the website a couple of weeks ago. However, I would have thought they've done the study before COVID. So it doesn't, I would say, doesn't take into account COVID deaths. Okay, so in terms of looking at the future, in 2100, we're likely to shift from the largest populations being China, India, and the US to India, China, and Nigeria. And what we're seeing is a growth in population in areas of Africa, India, and other countries like Indonesia, but mostly around the African continent. So have you looked at BRIC economies in the past, emerging economies? Okay, so there's certain countries that are growing more rapidly in terms of their wealth. Brazil, Russia, India, and China are key ones that other countries will want to trade with, because that's where more people have got disposable income. Okay, so just to put it into perspective, world population percentages. This was based in 2017, but hasn't changed significantly since then. But the UK isn't even on the map. We're so tiny. But you can see the biggest populations are India, China. The biggest population in Europe is Germany, and Germany are on there. So you'll start to see that in the future, the UK becomes smaller in terms of population as other countries grow. So in the UK, one of the things we are concerned about, but also in other countries, is ageing population. So what do I mean by ageing population?
Demographic shift from young people holding a higher percentage of the population to older people.
Yeah, also known as silver surfers. What we're finding is that we've got a significantly older population. So people are living longer. That's due to availability of food, availability of healthcare, improvements in medication. So we're seeing a significant number of over 60s. So that trend is going to continue on a global basis. Japan is leading the way with the number of older populations that it has. As an example, Japan had a very strict migration policy, and they had very, very few migrant workers working there. But what they're finding is, as they've got an older population, younger people aren't getting married or having relationships and having children. Therefore, they've had to open up positions to migrant workers. So they've got a lot more migrant workers there now, which are needed to fill gaps with younger workers, because the younger people aren't having children as much. Okay, any ideas why people in Japan might not be having children?
You're highly encouraged to work in like a company, so therefore people put in not having a child in order to work longer and later in life, and then kind of less.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Any video gamers? Any gamers online?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you heard what's happening with young Japanese people with gaming? Okay.
Yeah, they're getting digital girlfriends, right?
That's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're getting so absorbed that they're not having relationships. It's true.
I guess in a weird way, like in a philosophical way, a computer is makes more sense, perhaps. Do you know what I mean? A relationship with a computer is perhaps easier than a relationship with a person for some people.
Yeah, I mean, you do you. That doesn't sound fun.
I don't know what the
yeah, it doesn't sound very rewarding, but I mean, yeah, there is probably some pros to be had about having a relationship with a computer as opposed to. Isn't there a film about that? Her, right?
Yeah, it's 2021. You can't really judge these days, can you?
Okay, so on the right is just a list, and you can see that actually there's a lot of European countries there, except for Japan, that are having older, aging populations. And
they're going to don't they suppose that that population will eventually plateau? And I guess that will correspond with like economic development. And I see a lot of Europe there, and I know that Japan and South Korea are on the decline.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be we never really get a bigger population than this.
Well, Sweden is in a negative position in terms of its population growth. So Sweden, they have far fewer babies than we do in the UK. So yeah.
Yeah, that's expected to be a big challenge for certain nations in particular. Like I think China is expected to be their biggest issue. And as a result of the one-child policy, is expected to extremely rapidly grow.
Yeah.
And without having enough a degree of economic wealth to support these new elderly people, they will have a very difficult time to look after them.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, China introduced the one-child policy, but in their culture, boys have got more value than girls. So unfortunately, there were when choices were made, if they would just and the baby wasn't a boy, then there were quite a number of abortions as a result of that. But nowadays, what you're finding in China is that there's a significant number of males, but there's an imbalance with females. So nature.
I think some industries as a result of it.
Pardon, Noma?
I think that they made some industries as a direct result of that thing that you just mentioned. Like I think they'd like a lot of like rent-a-girlfriend type things because there isn't enough women for everyone to have one.
Yeah, so nature tends to provide a balance of males and females, but China's got that issue now, so it'll be interesting to see how that in the future affects their population growth. So basically, we're all living older. So when I was about your age, people were only living till 65. However, nowadays they're living about 76 years. So we are all going to be living longer. And you see lots of sci-fi movies about people who are in their hundreds, but actually Japan has the highest concentration of people over 100 across the world, and we're starting to see an increase in that in the UK as well. As you can see, in 1990, the average woman had 3 children, but now that's gone down to probably about 2.3 now. I know it's difficult to say, you can't really have 2.3 children. But there's various reasons. So women are choosing to have careers. There's more choice. They've got more money available. There's less pressure to have children in a traditional way. And women are leaving it longer. So some women are leaving it longer, and by the time they try to have children, they're finding that actually they're not being successful.
Also, I don't know if this is relevant globally, but I've noticed in our generation, at least, I think a lot of people are having kids younger. Like I know someone from back at school, like multiple people who's already had kids.
Yeah.
In my parents' days, they wouldn't have had kids until they were like mid-30s or something. Generally.
Well, when I was your age, we had them younger, and it was unusual to have them in the 30s. So it's interesting how things change. Economies change, people's viewpoints change. So it's interesting to see these trends do change, and it is a bit cyclical as well.
I guess as well, like with the like people have been more open to things like abortions now. It's a sensitive topic, but
yeah,
things like that are more openly expressed now. Yeah,
definitely. Well, in most economies, still in some countries, it's a taboo. Yeah, but yeah. So the reason why this is a concern is that it has an impact on people's pensions. Not just about business and economics. It does have an impact. So looking at 2013, one pensioner would be supported by tax payments from 4 workers. So this is government pension, not private pension. Whereas in 2060, there'll only be 2 workers to support 1 pensioner. So why is that going to be such a problem?
Well, you've got less people like making a value to the economy and producing stuff to support the elderly. Like as you said, let's say 100, each of those 4 people are producing £100 and you gave £50 to the elderly person, then you're giving up 12 point however many pounds. If you're going to do that for the other one, you have to pay out the full like £25, like because you only got half as many people supporting them.
Yeah, and there's more reliance on those 2 workers to be productive. It also might mean that pensions will have to be reduced because there's less financial support, less economic support for it. So this is why it's a big concern to government. Another area to look at is migration. So we've talked a little bit about migration, but I wanted to just highlight some of the advantages and disadvantages. So you've probably heard a lot about the disadvantages and around the time of the Brexit campaign. So a lot of the comments, the negative comments, were that more migrants coming over are using the NHS. It also, they're taking our jobs. They're putting the price of property up. They're claiming benefits. So these are some of the negative things that you might have heard around that time. However, it's important to think about the advantages that skilled migrant workers provide. They do provide new skills, different ways of working. So in their countries, they've got experience in different ways. A lot of the skilled migrant workers that are coming over are way over skilled for the role. It also provides new jobs. So as a result of them coming over, and it opens up jobs, they fill gaps in skilled labour. Some of the jobs UK people don't want to do, so cleaning, nursing, especially in social care, agriculture. It also encourages foreign investment. So we've got a lot of Polish businesses in the UK as a result of Poland migrant workers coming over. And it also provides increased tax revenues to the government. So there are quite a lot of advantages of having skilled migrant workers, particularly if in the UK we're not having as many children and we're going to find that we have gaps where we don't have enough population to fill the jobs that businesses require.
I've heard it said that the government that offered the referendum in the first place, the Tory government, apparently they didn't really have any motivation to take an angle on migration. It was more about finances. That was just what the electorate jumped on, and so they ran with it.
Yeah,
I don't think the government necessarily saw there to be an advantage to reduce migration.
I think a lot of UKIP's lobbying steered the nation in a certain direction to focus on immigration and NHS income that it could get instead of us paying Europe our funds. Okay, so at that, a big concern back in 2012 was going from quite a low point of net migration to quite a high one. So you can start to see here that the EU referendum, since then, we've started to see reduced net migration. Okay, so this was the peak here in terms of having more people coming into the country than going out. So what you can see now is a steadying in terms of having a lot fewer migrants coming into the country. We need to be mindful that this doesn't go too low because we don't have the skilled population to meet current employers' demands. Okay, so just to sum up, we've only got a few minutes left. What do you think? I'd like you to look at two concepts. If we reduce the number of EU migrant workers in the UK, or if we have an ageing workforce. So I'd like you to just think about those questions and spend a couple of minutes thinking about them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just randomly pick some of you to see what you think. Okay, so you've got a couple of minutes just to look at one of those topics. And I'll leave the screen open for you.
Do you want us to focus on like one of the four?
Just one of them. Just think about one of them, and then I'm going to just randomly pick a few of you. Right then, let's have a little look. Right, Kelly.
Hello.
Hiya. What do you think?
I went for the migrant workers. Me and my husband run a pub, so it's quite sufficient to us at the moment. So it will affect hospitality, but it will. There's rules at the moment where we can keep hold of a lot of our chefs through them becoming residents of the UK. But if it will give more employment for non-employed people within the UK, it's not the hardest job in the world to do if you want to work in the kitchen.
Yeah. Are you finding it difficult to get that staffed at the moment?
Well, not at the moment because we've been closed for a year, but
a year.
We probably will have issues when we open again.
Yeah.
But not us specifically, but we will as a company most probably. It's getting more staff in when our season peaks again.
Are you finding in your sector that there are a lot of EU migrant workers?
Yeah, I would say a very large percentage. I would say probably 70% of our kitchen staff are not UK residents.
Yeah, so it'd be quite challenging to replace them, do you think?
Yeah, definitely, because unfortunately a lot of people that live in the UK don't want to be chefs. There's not the career that used to be years ago where you would go to catering college and things like that. No one does that anymore. It's not an option.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. One more person who hasn't said anything or has been sort of been a bit quiet. Now's your time to shine. Okay, no worries. Okay, so we've had quite a nice discussion. In further sessions, what you'll find is that we have a bit more of a some breakout groups as well. So each session will be a bit different. So what I'd like you to do between now and next week is work through the intersessional task on Moodle. If you have a little look on Moodle, I've popped the intersessional task on here. It will always be on Moodle, okay? And you've got a choice. I've given you a whole series of questions to choose from, just to start the mental juices going. Just choose one of those topics, or if you don't like that topic, I popped in some articles in here for you to have a read as an alternative. And there's also a little podcast if you're interested in education and higher education. There's a podcast there. And then submit your one-page response before Friday. I'm no more than one page. I just want to see what you think. Okay, so there's some of the articles. And I'd like you to, if you're happy for us to kick off and share it at the beginning of the session, then could you just put yes in the document title? Okay, so it's just a little bit of work for you to start thinking of. If you've got another question that you're interested in exploring that isn't on this list or in the articles, and it relates to your assignment, then go ahead. I'm just looking for the first 15 minutes of each session to be a bit of a discussion point. Okay, so any questions?
Yeah, quick one. Are we allowed to be in session in groups, for example, in our assignment groups?
Sorry, say it again.
Are we allowed to do the intercession in our groups, like that we're going to do our assignment in?
If you want to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind if you do it individually in pairs or small groups. That's absolutely fine. What I'm looking for is for you to to encourage your curiosity about the world. Okay, so sorry we've gone over a little bit. I will endeavour to stay on time in the future. So I hope you found today's session useful, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah, I really liked today's session. Thank you, Tara.
All right, take care.
Cheers, thank
Enjoy
you.
your day, Miss.
Bye.
Thanks.
See you
Bye.
later.
Thanks.
Bye. If you're just joining, please stay.